you were saying earlier, Angela, you were saying that the government never lies, like somebody's quote. And, you know.
I was being facetious.
No. But what's funny is you are absolutely correct. The government doesn't lie. The government is perfect. The government is complete. What is the problem is there's a man who acts on behalf of the government that lies. The man or the woman lies. The governments are perfect. The governments are written in the dictionaries as a perfect body organization, a perfect corporation, a perfect assembly of constitutions. It's a beautiful thing, governments. The only problem is who is the one doing the lying. The government is a what. The government's not a who. A what can't lie. My tree can't lie. Only a who can lie. So a government is a what, not a who. So you guys are, the folks who work for the government, the men or the women who work for the government, they love when you people keep attacking the government when you should be actually holding a man and woman personally liable. You should be holding the individual liable, not the organization.
That's right. You're absolutely right. We should be naming names and holding them accountable.
Naming names. That's exactly what you guys, instead of just saying the government is that. Okay, who specifically in the government is in control of that agent and in control of that agency? Who's in control of the IRS and the IRS agents? Bob Finkel, whoever. Let's just make up the name, Bob Finkel and Susie Cupcake. Okay? Go after them. Say that they're not, training and discipline and maintaining their agents in a certain manner, and they're causing harm and injury and loss to their fellow man. Regardless they're wearing a badge, they're still causing harm and loss to their fellow man. That was the one thing that he was saying. Another thing I heard much earlier on, I'm actually sitting on top of a spool of cable. I'm out in the back of the farm on my backhoe. But I stopped because I wanted to talk to you guys real quick. And then the other thing I wanted to say to you guys is you guys keep saying it's so hard to find case law, it's so hard to find precedent on the internet now. Good. Because, like, what's his name said, Rod Class. Rod Class said that they won't let us use legalese in their courts. And if we try to use legalese in their courts, they basically just dismiss us. Because a court, just like any other society, a legalese court, a legalese society is a hierarchy. It's shaped like a pyramid. And the plaintiff and the petitioner and the defendant and the respondent and the mobbant, they're all at the bottom. And then you got the magistrates and the lawyers up on the next tier, and then you got the magistrate above him, and then you got the judge above them. It's a pyramid. It's like almost like a family organization. Mom and dad are at the top, aunts and uncles are in the middle, and the children are at the bottom. So they're looking at you as a bunch of children. So when you're using their stuff or trying to use their stuff, they're just like, that's a lovely opinion you have, sonny boy. But honestly, you're so far down on the pyramid, we don't really give a damn what your opinion is. So like with Rod Class, they were saying, even the judge told him, you know what, you shouldn't, be using our stuff. Then they're absolutely right. Go into court as a man. Point out the man or the woman on the other side. Stop pointing out the state attorney general. Stop pointing out the governor. Stop pointing out the president. Stop pointing out the man. Stop pointing out the woman and go after them. Stop going after the state of Alabama. Stop going after the state of Georgia. Stop going after the IRS. That's ridiculous. You're going after a what, not a who. You're going to have to start understanding that this old way of thinking, and the younger people who listen to my show understand it a lot better, we have to go after man and not after organizations, because organizations...
And you have to clarify that when you say go after, you don't mean in the physical sense, you mean on paper.
Paper, pen, and ink. That's how you go after them. You go after them how they're coming after you. They're always coming after you with paper, pen, and ink, because they will not have a man... Okay, like when you have a trial, you can have a trial by combat. You can have a trial by ordeal. That's where it used to be a man coming after another man. One man making a claim somebody's done something wrong, he wants satisfaction. Okay, they're not coming after you as in a trial anymore, man on man. They're coming after you with some statutory code or some violation of some code or some rule or some regulation, but they're not coming after you with a man. They're not saying you've done anything wrong to a man. So that's what I just do. I evoke the old law of the universe, and you can go, I'm sure, on any planet, you can watch any Star Trek episode, and all of a sudden, you're a man on man or a man on against a Vulcan or whatever. They pit man to man. And that's the way it works around the universe. So all these ridiculous laws and codes, they're written in the code. And like I said, thank God my dad couldn't read or write English, because anytime they try to flash a piece of paper at him, he's like, I don't trust what's on this paper. I don't know who you are. Why should I give a damn what this piece of paper says? Honestly, I don't know what it says. And it says, well, you got to give us all your property, all your money. It's like, oh, come on, you got to be kidding me. You think I'm going to fall for that trick? You think I'm silly? You think I'm really going to care that this piece of paper says that? Now, who's the man who says I owe money to somebody? Who's the man? I'm calling him out man to man. And that's what I do with every single case that I work with the people. Anytime a government entity comes, I always call out the man or the woman who's in charge of the agency and said, okay, do you believe that I owe this agency a debt? Okay, and how am I indebted to the agency? What have they provided for me? What was the benefit I received? What was the product? What was the service? And you have to itemize it. You have to give me a bill of particulars. You have to say, we gave you $316.17 worth of something. Okay, that's fine, then I owe it to you. But I don't owe something unless I have an exact bill and a bill of particulars that can itemize and say exactly to the penny what I owe, because you can't claim one dime more, 1 penny less of what is due, or that's fraud. And let me just finish with the Constitution thing. The Constitution is, Pepsi has a Constitution, Coca-Cola has a Constitution, it's the bylaws of how the organization is going to be structured. And when we really need to go back and see that half the delegates at the Constitutional Convention were saying, do not put down a Bill of Rights. And the reason why, I don't know if anybody who's listening, do you know why they said do not put, half of them said do not put down a Bill of Rights. Do you know why they said don't put down a Bill of Rights?
I can guess.
Okay, guess.
Because it restricts the power of the Constitution.
No, because if they write a Bill of Rights, man might believe that this Constitution or this United States government has some sort of control or authority over him. So if you're going to try to tell a man what his rights are just by the establishment of a centralized government whose only duty is to secure and protect the borders and maintain a standard currency, if you try to start writing the rights of man, man might actually think that he's limited to what he cannot do based upon the blessings or the grant or the permission of the United States government. So if you guys just Wikipedia it. It's pretty simple, the Bill of Rights, and you can see where the delegates, half of them said, this is ridiculous. This Constitution only defines the structure of Coca-Cola, Pepsi, of the United States government. Now, obviously, when Coca-Cola wrote their Constitution, the Constitution is just showing the components of how the organization is going to be structured. It's like 1 president, 3 vice presidents, a board of directors, and that's what the United States government did. They just set up a Constitution, basically defining the structure within the body. And that's what a Constitution is. People used to ask you, how's your Constitution today? And I said, my kidneys are a little sore, my bladder feels a little funny. And people would ask you your Constitution. It's just basically the encapsulation of the body. What is the contents? What's the elements of the body? That's all the Constitution is. So they put down 3 elements, legislative branch, the judicial branch, and executive branch. But it has absolute. Coca-Cola could write their Constitution, explain how their structure and organization is defined. Now, can you imagine the people who wrote the Constitution for Coca-Cola said, hey, you know what? We got to also put in a Bill of Rights for man. And the people in Coca-Cola would be like, that's ridiculous. What does us starting an organization, what does us starting a corporation have anything to do with the rights of man? Well, let's just put them down there. Well, why? That's just going to confuse man in the future. What Coca-Cola can and cannot grant them. It's like, well, Coca-Cola says that every man has the right to ice cubes. Coca-Cola says man has every right to a can opener. That's ridiculous. Why could we possibly care less what a corporate body and their Constitution defines as the rights of man? That's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But now they could grant the rights for their citizens, because citizens means a member of the family. So if you join Coca-Cola, you better believe they could give the bylaws and structure of how you must obey certain rules and conditions and ordinance once you're working and within the corporate structure of Coca-Cola or on one of their territories or property. But like I said, it's a wonderful benefit to be a member of Coca-Cola at times. But then when it's too much burden to be a member or a citizen of Coca-Cola Corporation, you just say, I'm going to opt out for it now. You know what? I just don't be involved with it right now, and I don't like where it's going, so you know what? I'm just going to opt out. And then when the United States government closed up for business for 5 weeks 2 years ago, nobody cared. So it's just a myth that this United States government has some sort of magical power. And everybody, like I was over in England at the time, everybody in England were like, wow, the United States government's going to close down. There's going to be rioting and looting in the streets. People are going to start turning into zombies in 3 weeks after the government closes down. And I said, wow, I'm glad I'm over here in England.
All right, now let Paula and Joe have their say.
Yeah. Okay, let him ask me something. Or let him contradict me. That's fine.
No, I'm not going to contradict. But
because I agree with what you said.
Joe, you're yelling. Go back.
I agree with what you said about government can't give us rights.
Our rights are our rights, and they're not given to us by anyone or regulated by anyone.
Okay, do you want to say anything about the Constitution or using legalese and trying to use a legalese in their legalese procedures or process?
Well, I have used it to beat them in court. You know, at least on 3 occasions, I would be sitting in jail doing 10, 15 years for growing marijuana or producing oil for people for healing. But I have used case sites from past court cases. Like I used a lot of the Constitution Man stuff, and it's excellent stuff. When you hit them with 10 Supreme Court rulings that have never been overturned, the prosecutor can't. It's like checkmate. The prosecutor can't argue against it. You know.
Okay. Well, let me explain something real simple that a court clerk in charge of the Alabama Supreme Court explained to me. He said to me, he says, even if you appeal this and you take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court rules in your favor, he says, what happens when the Supreme Court rules in your favor? He says it goes back to the court of original jurisdiction. It goes back to the local district court. And a local district court judge can say, you know what, honestly, I don't care what the United States Supreme Court ruled in Bob versus Hinkle, or even in this case. You know, as far as I'm concerned, no. It's lovely that the United States Supreme Court, when you always use the United States Supreme Court, you'll say it is the opinion of the court. It's not the law of the court. It's not. It says the opinion of the court. It's just an opinion. And like I said again, if it's Hale versus Hinkle or Roe versus Wade, when I'm in court against you, if you try to use Hale versus Hinkle or Roe versus Wade, I say, are you Mr. Roe? Are you Mr. Wade? No. Are you Mr. Hale? Are you Mr. Hinkle? Then what the hell does it matter what happened in 1908 or 1975? That was then. That was them. They were different situations. There were different participants. Everything about it, all the elements of the trial, I'm sure the exhibits and evidence are different. The witnesses are not the same. So you're bringing up something that's kind of similar of what might be happening today. I'll just say let's focus with the case and the issues that are at hand, the witnesses, the evidence, and the exhibits we have at this time. Don't worry about what happened in 1902 with Mr. Hale and Mr. Hinkle. You see what I'm saying? I just make it so simple. You know, like if you tried to use a case law precedent, if you tried to use Hale versus Hinkle against me, I just laugh. I say, are you Mr. Hale? Am I Mr. Hinkle? And I'm sure the exhibits and everything we have against each other is completely different, and it's totally irrelevant what the opinion was of the United States Supreme Court in 1902, because honestly, maybe Mr. Hale and Mr. Hinkle, you know, stuck their tongue out at the United States Supreme Court and they ruled against them. I don't know. I wasn't there. Do you have anybody testify that that's exactly what? No, you don't.
Carl, the only problem I have with you is I think you're arrogant and you say only my way is the way. Let me tell you, many people have used other things, other arguments, and it has worked. And to just say my way is the only way is arrogant. I agree with.
What I say is I'm not a hippie, okay, but there's something about this is the age of Aquarius, and I can't stand hippies. But the age of Aquarius means this is the time of man. It's the end of the king. It's the end of big government. It's the time of man. And I just happen to step in at the right time. And this hippie age of Aquarius stuff, I really believe it's true. I really believe this is the time of man. I really believe it's the end of legalese. I really believe it's the end of kings. I really believe it's the end of big centralized governments. I believe it's the end. YouTube and communication is making the information so easy for people to understand. When some man like me just comes on and just says, look, make a 2-sentence claim, make a 1-sentence notice, and you're done. That's all you have to do. No 10,000 pages, no 500 hours of reading in the library. Just 2 sentences, 1 sentence, and be done, and go back out to the sunshine and enjoy your life like God intended man to enjoy. Get away from the centralized government.
Carl, these young people that you're talking about, they are your followers. You worked very hard to get to those 2 sentences to where you win. You work to build up your stature in the community, to know who you are as a man. That's a big feat.
There's a lot of kids. There's a lot more kids who I can't believe how many kids in their 20s and their 30s are writing to me and saying, oh, my God, you of what I've been looking for my whole life. I didn't have a mom. I didn't have a dad. They were too busy accumulating wealth and good.
Stop moving around, Karl. You're cutting out.
What I'm trying to say is I'm trying to get people away from the books. I'm trying to get people away from the Constitution. I'm trying to get people away from the written word of man. I want people to go what's innate, what God gave them. They know when I speak, it feels right in their heart. They don't have to read it in a book. They don't have to read a Constitution. They don't have to read ordinances. They don't have to read a damn thing. I talk to people all over the world, and somehow it gets through to them. They're like, oh, my God, Paul, when you speak, it hits me in the heart. You know, you're not worrying about what the paperwork says. You don't care what the Constitution. You don't care what the Magna Carta says. You don't care what the Bible says. You don't care what anything reads. That's right, because the Bible was written by a man. The Constitution was written by a man. It's interpreted by a man. What did God make you? Did God make you feel that this was the right thing to do, to turn your child over to the government or to turn your property over to the government? Does that feel right to you? No. Have you done anything to hurt any man? No. And why are you turning all your property over to the government? Because they said you haven't paid a certain tax, or that you were speeding, or that you were driving without a license. Who did you hurt? You didn't hurt anybody. So just say to them, can you just please the man or woman, folks who I've caused harm to, can you please show me the debt, and I will be glad to pay the bill. Give me the particulars. Tell me exactly what my debt to society is, and I'll pay it. And they don't do it. Because you need one man to stand there and hold up that bill in court and say it's a true bill. That bill is totally true. Everything on that against you is true, Paul. Really, what did I do? Well, the cop had to stop you. Okay, well, it took him 3 minutes. Okay, we pay him $20 an hour. Okay, I owe you 63 cents for the cop's time. Okay, anything else I need? Any other bill? You know, any particulars in that bill? I need it itemized. You got to tell me exactly why I need to pay this amount of money. You need to show me the debt. You need to show me exactly the cost. It's just like when you get something worked on. If you come over to me and you say, can you weld something for me, Carl? Yeah, sure. It's like, it'll be $83. I say, what's $83 for, Carl? Well, it's for the flux, it's for the wire, it's for the electricity, it's my expertise, it's my time. And honestly, it comes out to $83.17. But you know what? I was cutting your break. Okay, you owe me $83.17. Say I'm going to give you a bill with the particulars. Why you owe me a debt. So if I owe a debt to society, just give me the bill of particulars. Is that why I'm going to court? Because I owe a debt to society? Yeah, great. Give me the bill. And like I said, if you guys want to do your other styles, hey, God bless you, man. Because if you guys do your styles, it just makes a lot more business for the legal society.
You're fading out, Karl.
Like I said, no, the man was saying, like, I'm very arrogant because I like my way. No, I really, the legal society, if the legal society didn't do what they're doing to you people, I wouldn't be making any money.
I
didn't say
you're arrogant because you like your way. I said I think you're arrogant because you say your way is the only way.
No, I don't say it's the only way. The legalese way is a wonderful way, because when you guys get trapped up in this legalese nonsense and you guys run into a brick wall, you guys come to people like me for help. So it's wonderful, the legal procedure, because if you understood how simple this was, if everybody learned it's 2 sentences, 1 sentence, and we're done, I can make no money. The legal world can make no money. But as long as you people keep getting trapped in this legal structure and this legalese rigmarole, that the crazy maze, the crazy mousetrap they made for you guys, you're going to keep generating money for these people forever. These people wear suits and ties. They have a mighty suits. They drive Mercedes, and they've never gotten their hands dirty one day in their life. They've never sweated one day in their life. And how are they doing it? From taking it from hardworking people like people who listen to Angela's show. So it's like, well, you've got to cut off the money supply to these people. Get away from these people. Get away from this legal society. Get away from their books. Get away from their teachings. Get away from them. Because it's just going to keep costing you people money. And the more and more you deal with these legal people, the more and more money you're going to make for them. So I tell you, if you want to work with the legal society, God bless you.
Can we talk about not legalese? Let's talk about what you know about cable, because I also built out a cellular telephone license in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So I see where you're going, that we need to actually be productive. So
well, why did you bother getting a license? Why did you get a license? Why didn't you just do it?
Because, I didn't know that at that time, and I don't know if I would just set up. Are you saying just set up a broadcast television station?
Yeah, of course. And then when somebody says that your frequency is interfering with their if your frequency is interfering with their frequency and they've been there first, then obviously you're going to have to remodulate your frequency to another channel. It's simple.
Right.
Yeah, it's simple.
Right. But here's what's not simple. you're working in a community of people who do believe that. Like, for example, I'm on a radio in Woodstock, and this lady has worked very hard to get her FCC license to do it.
Why?
So,
Why bother getting licenses? God gave you the ability to communicate with your fellow man in any means that you wish.
no.
Who the hell could tell you can't talk to your fellow man? Unless you're interfering with somebody else's right to talk to their fellow man. If you're stepping on their frequency, if they've been there first, or if your frequency is so powerful that it's modulating with somebody else's frequency, then you gotta monitor it. That's all.
You know what, Carl? Let me speak for a minute without interruption. You just can't go on and start your own TV station. The FCC comes in and confiscates all your equipment. It's happened to people who've tried that.
Well, before you set up this magical TV station, before you do that, why don't you just write to the man who controls the FCC? I remember it was that General Schwarzkopf or whatever son, whatever the guy was. Why don't you just write to the FCC? Paula's son, right. Why don't you just write to Joey, little Joey Powell, and say, Joey Powell, I'm going to communicate with my fellow man on this frequency. Do you have a problem with it, Joey? You know, does Joey have a problem with this? You know, is any man going to have a problem with this? And he says, well, the FCC.
Why aren't you doing that?
Because I couldn't care less. Ma'am, what time is it at night, ma'am? I'm standing out in the middle of a field. Okay, I got a backhoe I shut off for a couple minutes to talk to you folks. I got to move a whole bunch of spools of cable, and I got to move a whole bunch of water tanks still. Ma'am, I'm a very busy man. I wish you came down here and you saw how I lived. I don't just sit in an office building. I got to get hot running water in my place still. You know, I still got a lot of that. I got to get a stove in my house. There's a lot of things I still got to do. I'm moving from one place to another.
Right.
Can I build a TV station? Of course I can. I got all the books. I got all the equipment. I got all the amplifiers. Of course I could.
Are you going to do it?
What? You'd have to show me what would be the benefit for me to do it.
I don't know. You can broadcast to more people.
YouTube is working fantastic for me. Once YouTube, if maybe YouTube goes down, yeah, then you go pirate radio, pirate TV, yeah, sure. And then like I said, you got to go after little Joey Powell first and say, hey, Joey, you got a problem? I'm going to start up a frequency at this modulation, and it's going to have this many watts broadcasting over planet Earth. Do you have a problem with it, Joey, for me broadcasting on this frequency to my fellow man?
When they come back and say the FCC requires that you
I didn't ask the FCC. I asked the man in charge of the monster.
No, I know. I'm just telling you what they'll come back with. That's how they answer. They don't acknowledge what you're saying.
They will acknowledge you when you do say that.
Same thing when you're dealing with the FTB here in California. They don't come back as an individual human being. They come back as the California Franchise Tax Board.
Okay, well,
and
William
they say
Anderson,
we, but they never say who we is, okay?
Okay, Bill Anderson, who's listening to the show tonight, I guarantee, because he tried to call me a little earlier today, he wants me to come out there and do a show for them out in the Bay Area, which I'm sure I'm going to do it for them. He's had to deal with the FTB. He doesn't have to pay a freaking dime, okay? He's done with them, okay?
Lovely.
But like I said, yeah.
Share it
yeah. Because we do what? No, ma'am. I can't do that for every freaking. You guys got to. You kind of give me a good reason why I'm supposed to help a particular man or a particular woman. You just don't throw this stuff around like cotton candy. So nobody pays property taxes. Nobody pays FTB. Nobody pays anything anymore. Who's going to pay for all this stuff? And then you guys are mad that these politicians get together and form corporations, and they go to the IMF and they get funding for their communities because you guys don't want to pay taxes. So what they do is they go to the IMF for loans. But they go and they say, hey, look, we got 3,817 people in Royal Valley to this and that. This is how much money we take in every year from this. We could borrow money from the IMF, and we could pay you back at this rate because we have this many taxpayers, and we collect this much money every year.
I wish I had a bunch of property to just grow some marijuana. That's all I want to do, and heal people of diseases. Why don't you take it and find some common land, some land in common ground. Why don't you find out where some common ground is in your area and write to the man in charge of the common ground, like the Interior Department, Minister of Interior, or whoever, and just say, hey, Bob, I'm going to be accessing this public land. This is public land. I'm a member of the public, and I'm going to grow some medicinal plants on there. Do you have a problem with that, Bob? And go from there. Why don't you just do that? There's tons of common ground out here. There's tons of public lands.